My name is Stephanie Cook. I'm 30 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the bond holding my family together. When bills stacked up, I settled them. When their finances crashed, I organized their accounts. Whenever chaos hit, I was the one they depended on to clean it up. I never demanded appreciation. I assumed that's what family was supposed to do. But I was mistaken. And nothing could have prepared me for the message that shattered everything. It was 2 a.m. when my phone lit up with a notification I'll remember forever. You're done. This family doesn't want you anymore. The message came from my parents in the family group chat. Seconds after, my brother responded with celebratory emojis as if he'd been waiting for this moment for years. I sat frozen in the darkness, staring at that bright screen, my chest tightening like my own bloodline had just cast me out. I did everything, paid their rent, wiped out their debts, kept their lives running smoothly, and this was their thank you, a single heartless text. All those years of sacrifice, prioritizing them over myself, suddenly meant nothing. My hands shook as I typed my response. Good thing. I just canceled all the payments, too. I pressed send and blocked every number before I could doubt myself. Not long after, the family chat exploded with 156 new messages, a storm of panic, rage, and desperate begging. But I didn't open any of them. They truly believed they could discard me after all I had done. They had no clue that this was just the start. For the first time, I wasn't the one scrambling to stitch things together again. I leaned back, heart racing with a mixture of terror and freedom. This was the moment I took my life back. And what followed pushed me further than I ever imagined. Trust me, you'll want to hear how it all unravels. Before we move on, drop a comment with your time and city. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. This disaster didn't begin with a text. Its roots stretched back to our dull little home. As a freelance accountant, I was the person who maintained every dollar our family used, managing a joint savings account that kept us from falling behind. Every week, I'd sit at my messy desk, logging into the bank app to cover rent, groceries, and utility bills. I handled due dates, bargained for payment extensions when money was short, and kept the lights from going out. It was exhausting, but I did it because I believed family meant sharing the burden, even if I was the only one actually carrying it. My mom, 53, struggled with diabetes, and I became her financial lifeline for medical expenses. I hunted for the most affordable insulin, battled insurance over denied claims, and paid her co-pays from our savings. Once, when she ran out of medication, I drove across town at midnight for a refill, making sure she stayed safe. I spent nights deciphering medical bills, calling providers to question random fees, and organizing her appointments. It wasn't only the money. It was the time, the stress of keeping her healthy while managing my own life. Then there was Connor, my brother. When he lost his retail job a few years ago, I used our savings to buy him a used Ford truck so he could get to interviews. I spent a whole Saturday at the dealership haggling to drop the price by a few hundred, and handed him the keys with a hopeful smile. Connor barely nodded, acting like it was my duty to fix his mistakes. I told myself he was struggling and would appreciate it later, but he never did. He drove off, leaving a hollow ache in my chest, like my help meant nothing. Over time, reality became clear. My family treated my support like it was owed to them, as if my purpose was to solve their problems. Dad would skim through the account summaries I prepared, never wondering how I managed my own bills. He'd just grunt and move on like my effort was invisible. Mom leaned on me for every financial hiccup, assuming I'd handle it without hesitation. They didn't see the late nights I spent keeping their world intact. They just assumed I'd always be there to fix everything. At 30, I was exhausted. My freelance clients demanded long hours crunching numbers, while I balanced the family finances in the background. I'd stare at my laptop, eyes burning, wondering why my life felt so hollow. I kept reminding myself it was my responsibility, that family always comes first, no matter how heavy the load. But that burden was crushing me. Each time I paid Mom's hospital fees or covered Dad's overdue car bill, I waited for the smallest hint of appreciation, a sign that I mattered beyond the money I provided. That tiny hope pushed me forward even as resentment quietly grew. Mom relied on me for every financial problem. She'd call in a panic over a late credit card bill or a sudden repair for their ancient dishwasher. I'd log in, move money around, and reassure her everything was under control. Once, when the water bill went unpaid and the city threatened to shut it off, I raced to the utility office, skipping a client meeting to resolve it. She never asked how it impacted my work or what it cost me. She'd give a quick thanks and carry on. I kept telling myself this was what family does, that loyalty requires sacrifice. But as the years dragged on, I started wondering if they even saw me as anything more than their personal fixer. 4 months ago, Dad's new job turned everything upside down. He scored a promotion to construction manager, a huge jump from his old crew leader gig. His income nearly doubled, and suddenly our tiny worn-down home wasn't big enough for his growing ego. He bought expensive work gear and talked nonstop about remodeling the kitchen, luxuries we never imagined back when I was stretching every dollar to keep us afloat. I was thrilled for him at first, hoping it would finally relieve the financial burden I'd been carrying alone for years. But instead of acknowledgement, I got silence. Dad stopped asking about my life, acting like I no longer fit into his freshly polished world. Mom followed his lead, hosting family gatherings I wasn't invited to. She'd call them small get-togethers, but I'd hear the music and laughter from neighbors, barbecues happening in our own backyard that I wasn't welcome at. One Saturday, I drove past and saw cars packed along the street, relatives mingling happily while my phone stayed silent. When I confronted Mom, she brushed it off with some flimsy excuse about forgetting or keeping it simple. It burned, like they were slowly erasing me from the very family I had fought so hard to support. Then there was Connor. He stopped replying to my messages as well, completely consumed by his new girlfriend and a vague business plan he refused to explain. Connor had always been unreliable, but this felt different. He dodged my calls, left me on red, and when I finally cornered him at a cafe, he shrugged me off, saying he was too focused on building his future. I pretended it didn't hurt, but the space between us widened. His silence felt like an unbreakable barrier, no matter how hard I tried to reach him. The shift was unmistakable. Family dinners, a weekly tradition, vanished. My check-ins earned one-word responses, if any. I had become a ghost in my own family, only visible when they needed something. The harder I tried to stay connected, the more like an outsider I felt. Many nights I lay awake, replaying conversations, trying to figure out what I had done to deserve their cold indifference. Loneliness clung to me, heavy and constant, but I still hoped they'd snap out of it, that this distancing was temporary. Despite everything, I kept monitoring the joint savings account, clinging to the responsibility that gave me purpose. I'd log in, check that the balance was intact, and reassure myself that someday they would remember how much I had done for them. I'd scan through transactions, seeing the usual bills, searching for any sign that I was still needed. That account was my last thread of connection, a reminder that I mattered to someone. I convinced myself that one more call, one more text would remind them I was here, not just as a financial crutch, but as their daughter and sister. But then came the night everything snapped. I planned a simple dinner visit, something we hadn't done in weeks. I texted Mom to confirm, even offered to bring dessert. Her reply was curt. Sorry, something came up. No explanation. No rain check. Just a door closing in my face. I sat motionless in my car staring at that message, my stomach twisting as doubt punched through my chest. Why were they shutting me out? What had changed besides Dad's new paycheck? On the drive home, I replayed every sacrifice, wondering if they'd been preparing to cut me loose the whole time. Then came the worst blow. On a chilly Tuesday, I opened my banking app and froze solid. The joint savings account, the one I had protected for years, was gutted. $25,000 missing. I stared at the tiny number still remaining, my hands shaking as panic surged. I had checked it religiously even while they pushed me away, but nothing could have prepared me for this. The transaction report showed one enormous withdrawal, a transfer that made my head spin. I scrolled faster, praying it was some system glitch or a mistake. Anything but the truth I feared. Then I saw the destination, Connor's account, no warning. No request. No explanation. Just his name stamped beside the transaction, like a slap across the face. I reread it again and again, hoping my eyes were wrong. But the screen didn't change. 25 grand. Taken without my consent. Connor, the same brother who had barely spoken to me in months, had emptied the money I had sacrificed years to build for all of us. Chad, I felt my throat tighten, disbelief and betrayal crashing over me like a wave. How could he do this? After everything I had done, paying the bills, buying his truck, holding us together, he took the money without a single word. Then I spotted an email from the bank buried deep in my inbox, sent weeks earlier. It warned about a login from an old device, one still tied to Mom's email. She had used the login information I'd given her years ago when I was still their financial lifeline. The truth hit hard. Mom had known. Maybe she hadn't done it herself, but she was a part of it. I pictured her sitting at the kitchen table, logging in while I was shut out like I no longer existed. My stomach twisted as the pieces aligned, my parents and Connor working together to take what I built. I grabbed my phone and called Melissa, my best friend since college. My voice cracked as everything tumbled out, the missing money, Connor's name on the transfer, Mom's login. Melissa listened quietly, her calm voice grounding me as I paced around my apartment. She didn't try to soften the truth. She let me vent, her words steady and supportive, reminding me that my feelings were valid, that I wasn't imagining the betrayal. For the first time in weeks, I felt understood. Melissa's presence was a lifeline, pulling me away from panic and helping me focus on what to do next. Her advice came fast. Lock the account right now, she urged, voice sharp with urgency. Change every password. Freeze the funds. Don't let them take another cent. With trembling hands, I followed each instruction, logging into the bank app, updating passwords, adding two-factor authentication, requesting fraud alerts. It felt like slamming a door in my family's faces, a final move to protect what little remained. Melissa stayed on the line, guiding me through the steps, her encouragement the only thing keeping me steady. By the time I hung up, the shock had cooled into anger, burning hot beneath a deep ache in my chest. I had spent years believing I was protecting my family, that my sacrifices mattered. But now it was obvious they didn't value me. They used me. My trust turned into ammunition against me. I sat on my couch staring at the screen, the locked account a reminder of the truth. Connor had stolen from me. Mom had enabled it. Dad, silent and complicit, stood by. The family I once defended had stabbed me in the back, and the weight of that betrayal was heavier than any responsibility I'd ever carried. By noon, I was speaking with Timothy, my lawyer. Surrounded by bank statements and a neat stack of printed emails, I laid everything out with a voice steadier than I felt. I gave him every detail. The transaction history showing the $25,000 withdrawal, the years of evidence proving I'd funded our household, from utilities to Mom's insulin. Emails confirmed I had set up and maintained the savings account, my name attached to every deposit and transfer I had made to save them from disaster. Timothy listened intently, scribbling notes as I explained every late night, every sacrifice, finally saying out loud how deeply my own family had exploited me. He didn't hesitate. He drafted a formal demand letter addressed to my parents and Connor, insisting they return the full $25,000 within 5 days. I reviewed the draft, each sharp legal phrase cutting through the fog in my mind. It accused them clearly of unauthorized withdrawal, documented my contributions, and firmly warned that legal action would follow if they refused. Timothy sent it by certified mail, ensuring they'd be forced to confront what they'd done. For a brief moment, I felt powerful, like I had reclaimed a part of myself they'd tried to erase. But the image of my family opening that letter made my stomach twist. Would they feel remorse or would they just get nastier? Mom answered that question quickly. She arranged a family meeting at their house, inviting aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. I only found out because a cousin texted, confused why I wasn't there. Mom stood in the middle of that living room and spun a tale, painting me as the selfish villain tearing the family apart over a little money. She claimed I had always been greedy, hoarding the account for myself. Relatives believed her lies, some glaring at me in the grocery store, others sending fake sympathetic messages with a tone that stung. Her betrayal sliced deeper than I thought possible, twisting my loyalty into something ugly. I refused to go. I didn't need their judgment or their staged concern. What I needed was proof. I spent hours at the bank requesting logs of every login, every transfer, every change made over the years. The bank manager helped me pull records showing that old device, Mom's device, accessing the account before the money vanished, tying her directly to their scheme. I organized everything into a thick folder, cross-referencing dates with deposits and payments I had made. Piece by piece, the case was forming, solid and undeniable. It kept me focused, a shield against the devastation of Mom's lies spreading through the family like wildfire. Then Connor finally texted, his words oozing with venom. "You're ruining this family," he typed, branding me a traitor who would rather drag us into court than simply talk. His words scorched across the screen, each one proof of how little he ever valued me. I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot and sent it to Timothy, my hands trembling with rage. Connor, the same brother I supported through countless rough patches, now dared to play the victim. I stared at his message, trying to understand how someone I once defended so fiercely could turn this cruel. It was yet another fracture in the trust I once guarded like gold. Melissa arrived at my apartment that night, carrying a stack of legal forms she'd grabbed from her office's system. She worked in a law firm's admin team and knew precisely what I'd require: sample affidavits, evidence sheets, even detailed instructions for filing in small claims court. She didn't try to give sympathy, didn't linger on my heartbreak. She simply handed me the paperwork with a firm nod. "This will help you nail them," she said. I spread the documents across my dining table, grateful for something solid to cling to, and began filling them out, every page a step toward holding my own family responsible. Melissa's help gave my anger a purpose, turning it into a weapon I could actually wield. A week later, a bulky legal envelope appeared at my door. My heart pounded as I ripped it open, only to find a counterclaim filed by my parents and Connor. They demanded I reimburse them for supposed family debts, including college tuition. They claimed they paid for groceries for years, even rent back when I was living with them a decade ago. They twisted my sacrifices into fictional obligations, painting me as some parasite who owed them everything. I collapsed onto my couch, reading accusation after accusation, disbelief crushing my chest. After everything I had done for them, they had the audacity to flip the narrative, demanding thousands as if I had been the one draining them dry. Connor pushed the knife deeper by spreading lies online. He posted publicly, calling me an ungrateful leech who stole from family and was now pretending to be a victim. His posts collected likes from distant cousins and nosy neighbors. Every comment felt like a stab to my reputation. I scrolled through the hate, my eyes burning, fighting the tears that kept blurring my screen. The same brother who quietly took $25,000 from me was now riling up strangers against me. The betrayal cut deeper than I imagined, his cruelty scraping away whatever trust I still had left. Melissa didn't let me drown. She went digging through public filings and archived financial records, uncovering documentation that showed my parents' upgraded lifestyle. Dad's promotion had boosted their income dramatically, far beyond anything they'd falsely claimed. Melissa delivered the folder to me personally, all business as she pointed out every lie. "They're not struggling," she said, sliding the evidence toward me. Her work gave me a shield, solid proof they were manipulating the truth, and I held it like armor against their attacks. Timothy used everything Melissa uncovered, building an airtight case. He emphasized the unauthorized access to the joint account, compiling login logs tied to Mom's old device and the exact moment Connor drained the funds. He added years of bank statements showing every dollar I poured into supporting them, then drafted a motion to strike down their counterclaim as complete fiction. We met in his office while he walked me through the plan, his confidence steadying the storm inside me. Every document, every timestamp was a brick adding strength to my side, and I trusted Timothy to tear apart their weak accusations one by one. My relatives wouldn't let up. Aunts and uncles called nonstop, insisting I drop everything for family's sake. One cousin confronted me in a cafe, whispering accusations that I was the one tearing us apart. Their pressure weighed heavy, every message a reminder of the family slipping through my fingers. But I refused to surrender. After years of sacrificing everything for them, I finally saw the truth. Loyalty wasn't returned. I hung up on their pleading voices, channeling my focus into the justice I deserved, my resolve turning harder with every guilt-soaked voicemail. Then one night, a coworker of my dad's, someone I'd met at a company picnic, texted me. He said Dad had been boasting at work about his new bonuses, overtime cash, even plans for a vacation home. The message punched the air from my lungs. Dad had been flaunting wealth while publicly pretending I owed them for existing. I forwarded the screenshot to Timothy immediately, another piece of proof exposing their greed. That text was the final blow. Undeniable evidence their counterclaim was a fabricated weapon to bury me. It fueled my determination like gasoline on a fire. By mid-month, rumors swirled throughout our Des Moines community. Melissa took it upon herself to confront anyone spreading lies. She cornered relatives at a family barbecue, one I wasn't invited to, and laid out the real story. How I'd funded my family for years. How they drained $25,000 without a shred of remorse. She brought records and emails, proof of everything they'd done. Faces fell. Some cousins nodded slowly as truth replaced the poison they'd been fed. For the first time, the narrative Mom crafted began to crumble, and I wasn't the villain anymore. Melissa's blunt truth changed everything, giving me a spark of hope that real justice wasn't just some fantasy. The church crowd, where Mom always wore her halo, turned on her almost overnight. They had planned a major charity auction with her as the lead organizer. But once Melissa's discoveries reached the pastor, they quietly erased her name from the list. A neighbor told me Mom was humiliated, scrambling to come up with excuses for why she'd been pushed aside. She had spent years crafting that holy reputation, only to watch it collapse in a matter of days. I didn't feel a shred of sympathy, not after she'd portrayed me as greedy to anyone who'd lend an ear. Her downfall was self-inflicted, and I couldn't help the dark satisfaction that crept in. Connor's life wasn't faring much better. His girlfriend, sick of his failed business schemes, tore into him during a loud argument at a neighborhood diner. Rumors spread fast. She dumped him, blaming his lies and reckless spending. Money I was pretty sure came from my stolen savings. By week's end, Connor packed up and vanished, chasing some vague job in another state. A mutual friend told me he'd slipped out of town without a goodbye. His exit felt like a chapter finally closing, though it stung knowing he'd escaped the chaos he created, leaving me to face the wreckage. Dad's job didn't survive the fallout either. The same co-workers he bragged to about his bonuses lost all trust once they learned the truth. His boss heard about the lawsuit and the gossip swirling around town and fired him for destroying team morale. Suddenly, my parents were scraping by, their luxurious lifestyle wiped away. A coworker's email explained how Dad's arrogance had sparked his downfall. Their financial disaster wasn't on me, though the irony was loud. They kicked me out and then crashed without my support. I buried myself in trial prep, staying late with Timothy to strengthen every angle of our argument. We combed through every file, login activity, Melissa's trace transactions, ensuring nothing could be doubted. I rehearsed my testimony, practicing how I'd finally explain years of sacrifice turned into betrayal. Each step forward felt like peeling off another layer of guilt they had dumped on me. The truth was spreading through town now, and I no longer felt like the villain. I was ready to face them in court, not just for the money, but for the dignity they'd ripped away. Then suddenly, a neighbor texted me, someone who once nodded along with Mom's venom. I'm sorry, she wrote, admitting she'd believed the lies until the real story surfaced. Her short, honest message knocked the air out of me. I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone, feeling a weight finally loosen. It wasn't just her apology. It was proof people were finally seeing me, not the monster my family invented. That tiny victory fueled my determination to keep pushing. On a bright Cedar Rapids morning, I signed the final court documents. The judge ruled entirely in my favor, ordering my parents and Connor to repay the $25,000 they'd stolen, plus Timothy's legal fees. Sitting in the courtroom, pen in hand, I felt a wave of relief break over me as the gavel came down. The money arrived within days, a victory hard-earned after months of fighting. I'd proven the betrayal, and the court's judgment drew a bold line between their lies and my truth. For once, I wasn't the one cleaning up their disasters. I was taking back what belonged to me. I left Des Moines behind and moved into a modern apartment in Cedar Rapids. I used part of the recovered money to pay for it up front, a warm space with tall windows and a view of the river. I set up a high-end security system, cameras, smart locks, everything, to guard my peace. No one would ever get close enough to hurt me again. As I settled in, I unpacked books and framed pictures, shaping the place into a home that felt entirely my own. Each decision, from the wall color to the doorbell tone, was another step toward a life free of their shadows. I found a new rhythm here, joining a local art group that gathered weekly in a studio downtown. We painted, joked, and traded pieces of our lives. I made friends who saw the real me, not the villain my family had invented. There was Laya, who shared my passion for watercolor, and Marcus, whose corny jokes always had us cracking up. Their kindness filled a hollow space I hadn't realized still hurt. For the first time in years, I felt like I fit somewhere. Those nights surrounded by brushes and laughter became my sanctuary, proof that I could build something worth waking up to. A month later, a letter came from my parents written in Mom's careful script. They pleaded for forgiveness, insisting they'd acted out of fear, asking me to come home and be a family again. Connor's name sat at the bottom, a lazy apology thrown in for good measure. I read it once, then tossed it straight into the trash. I didn't owe them anything. Not after the theft, the lies, the humiliation they'd fed the whole neighborhood. I blocked their numbers, erased their emails, and severed every connection. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. That door closed, and suddenly the past lost its grip. Back in Des Moines, everything was falling apart for them. Neighbors murmured about their downfall. With Dad unemployed, they struggled to pay the bills, their once neat home now buried under debt notices. Mom's church circle kept their distance. And Connor, back in town after running, was unwanted wherever he went. His reputation poisoned by his own actions. They were alone, their social scene gone, their financial comfort destroyed. A cousin told me all this, sounding almost sympathetic, but I felt nothing. They had designed their own cage, and I wasn't the one who locked the door. Looking back, I learned to set boundaries, to choose people who lift you up instead of tearing you to pieces. Their betrayal taught me my value, and I came out stronger. I created a new life, one where I choose who earns a place at my table. To everyone listening, thank you for staying with me through this journey. It's been intense. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Maybe a moment where you finally defended yourself. Share your story, because believe me, it's never too late to take back your